Perhaps if we can just start off on a personal note, if you can turn to your statement. You're aware of why you are here today. They relate to the media statements made by Lieutenant General Mchunu on the 6th of July, and subsequent to that, the National Assembly appointed this ad hoc committee in terms of reference, which you will see summarized on pages 2 through to 5. So if we could go to page 6 of your statement. And these are all personal particulars about when you were born, your school background, your tertiary education qualifications, and then at paragraph 11, you entered into full-time politics. There's a typo there. I take it doesn't apply to you. It says, I entered dull-time politics in 1991. It's full-time politics, isn't it? And you became involved, and you also have the distinction of having been appointed, elected as Premier of the KwaZulu-Natal province until May 2016, when you were removed / I think you used the word fired. You were elected into the National Assembly, paragraph 13, after the 2019 politics, general election, sorry. Your first appointment as Minister was of Public Service Administration on the 30th of May 2019, and then on the 5th of August 2019, you were appointed as Minister of Water and Sanitation. And then after the 2024 elections, after the formation of the Government of National Unity, you were appointed on the 30th of June by the President as Minister of Police. Just before we proceed, Minister, is there anything you would like to add, comment on that's not in the statement, or maybe just comment on any of these issues of a personal political nature?
Not really.
So you're happy that all this is accurately recorded?
Yes.
Can we just perhaps discuss your appointment and then your orientation as Minister of Police? After the elections and the formation of the Government of National Unity, you had been in the previous administration, you had been Minister of Water and Sanitation. Did you know, or were you aware that you would be appointed to another portfolio, especially Minister of Police?
No, I wasn't until it was done.
Or maybe just explain to us briefly, how does it work? Do you just get a phone call from the President to say, I'm appointing you, and you don't have a choice, or you consulted, or how does it work?
Firstly, I didn't even know in 2019 in the first place that I would be appointed as Minister of Public Service. And then it went on. I didn't know that I would be moved to water in Department of Water and Sanitation. I didn't know that I would be moved until the announcement was made on 5 August. And then I didn't also know that I would be appointed as minister at all, and that I would be appointed as Minister of Police. How it happened is that I got a call that I should report somewhere, Mahlamalulu, if not Makhato, on a particular evening, and I went there, and then I was informed.
What was your reaction when you got the call from the president or from the president's office that you would be appointed as Minister of Police?
Well, I imagine, I imagine that at that time, I went there, as I say, not knowing what would happen. And when it happened, I welcomed that, accepted that, and I didn't have a lot to think at that time about, because I was busy with this and that, up until I got time to start thinking about what it means and how to go about playing my role as Minister of Police.
No doubt, as you've come to realize, as you took on the job of being Minister of Police in our country especially, it's a huge portfolio with a huge responsibility. You nevertheless decided to accept that responsibility, and you've no doubt carried it out to the best of your abilities.
Yes, that was the other part of it. In other words, I stopped thinking about, yes, I've been appointed, given an opportunity, that nice part, and started reasoning about this position and how I would go about and who I'll talk to and all of that to get to know and understand more about it. And indeed, I reasoned at some point that it's a huge responsibility, especially in a country infested with crime like South Africa at the moment. From that, even at that time, that you somehow would stand between life and death of each human being in your country, each and every citizen in the country, young and old, alive and sick, and all of that. You take a very, very, very huge responsibility, and it runs to you personally, not just in terms of it being a job, but personally. That's how I thought about it, and that's how far I went in thinking about what I'd been thrust into.
Can we accept that you certainly had not discussed your impending appointment as Minister of Police with the president or anyone else in a position of influence or authority?
No, the President of the Republic is the only one that appoints and instructs that you'll be called. But the first word comes from him, and as it did, it came from him that I'm being appointed as Minister of Police, no one else. So well, I didn't know any.
I mean, this is your third appointment as a minister in our government, and all three are important. Minister of Public Administration, we've got a huge administration, public service, of course, and water and sanitation, and now the police portfolio. So you're certainly familiar with the workings of government and the workings of state, how the state works, how it operates, and so on.
Yes, I do, especially because prior to that, I'd had an opportunity of being appointed as MEC for Education, that is member of the Executive Council in KZN as far back as 2009 after general elections. And I served there for 4 years. But I went on to get an opportunity appointed as Premier of the province. All of that exposed me before the positions that you've just spoken about. And I may as well add that when I got to the Department of Education, KZN, shortly afterwards, there was some kind of upheaval when one of the unions made allegations against top management of the department that I'd just been appointed into. And I had to then deal with that matter, new as I was at that time, in the portfolio. We started by just listening and sort of ignoring what they were saying, but when they showed seriousness about their allegations, I then had to respond. And we investigated the allegations and went through the whole process and went on to become Premier as well. And at some point, I got confronted with a challenge when one of the HODs were filling up a post in one of the departments there. And when we were on the verge of appointing, then one of the unions, in this instance, now made allegations against the individual. And I had to think, what is it that I needed to do? I ended up appointing a panel to investigate those allegations before making final appointment. And then that was followed by a dispute between the individual and myself as Premier, which ended up in the Constitutional Court. And I won it. So that's the experience that I got prior to being given an opportunity as minister in the Republic.
So you were vindicated in that court case in terms of the way you handled that particular dispute?
Yes.
Okay. During that, you then also had the distinction of being appointed as Premier of KwaZulu-Natal province. And I take it that during that period, you had the opportunity of interacting at the very least with the provincial commissioner of police at the time. And perhaps during that period, you had also met other senior members of the police.
Yes, definitely. Not for the first time, though. I had been interacting with police for quite a long time, coming from KZN, which was almost all the time during the time when you became active in politics as a student. We were interacting with police even as a student leader after that, and or in the course of time. And when I got to political positions in my political party, the ANC, I got to interact a lot with police because of the dynamics in that province at that time for a long time. And then as well as when I became MEC and became Premier. I've been interacting with police for quite some time at different levels.
So you have both experience of the police, with the police, the way the police conducted themselves at the time when you were actively involved, student, as an activist. So on the one hand, it's how not to police, and on the other hand, post-1994, hopefully you had a better experience.
Yes, I confirm that. including getting to experience an arrest in the hands of police. It all happened at that time.
So did you get to know Lieutenant General Mchunu during this period when you were MEC, when you were Premier?
No.
You didn't get to know him at all?
No, not at all.
Who would have been the Provincial Commissioner of Police when you were Premier?
At some point, there was Ngiti. At some point, General Ngiti. That was before. After I became Premier, I can't remember who it was, up until Mamunye. Yes, Mamunye, General Mamunye, Lieutenant General Mamunye, who got appointed more or less at that time when I was Premier. We're working with him.
And your relationship with the Provincial Commissioner and the police at the time?
I would take it that from my side, the relationship was very good. I would take a phone, call her. I would report things when there were things to be reported. We would meet as well. So the relationship was good from my point of view.
Who would have been the Minister of Police at the time?
Minister of Police, there were different ministers during that time. I think we started off with Minister Natum Tetwa. And then I think Natin Tlego after that, and then Minister Mbalula after that. So they all had, but I knew that at some point there was also Charles Ngagula in political circles. Before I got to government, I did interact with him on various matters in the province.
Now, once you were appointed as Minister of Police in the Government of National Unity after June 2024, you would no doubt have oriented yourself with, what your portfolio is all about, and so on. No doubt, that's one of the first things that you would do, isn't it?
Yes.
So do you want to just discuss that? You deal with it in your affidavit at paragraphs 16 to 18. You can either read it, or if you want to refresh your memory, or if you want to speak from memory, you can tell us what your orientation was like.
Yes, I did got, after being sworn in, sought to have a meeting with the leadership of police in the country, just for orientation, starting off with meet and greet, look at each other in the face and get to know each other very well, as it happened in the office there. That was the start of the relationship, a working relationship with top officials in the police management.
So at paragraph 18, you say that my orientation was, paragraph 18, page 9 of your statement.
Yeah.
My orientation was extensive and ended only this year. Some of these orientation briefings touched on matters relevant to the National Political Killings Task Team. You refer throughout to that task team as the NPKTT. In one of the discussions we had around November 2024, I recall the National Commissioner clarifying to all present, that's to you and the Deputy Ministers, that the NPKTT was not a formal unit, but a task team. This to me was obvious because the NPKTT was a task team and not a unit. The important part about what he said was that the intention of the NPKTT was to evolve to a dedicated murder and robbery unit. I will later on demonstrate that the National Commissioner withheld information from this committee. He was aware of a work study that was undertaken and signed by General Satoli, the former National Commissioner, in June 2019. The work study disbanded the NPKTT and resuscitated all the specialized units, including the murder and robbery unit. This occurred before I came into the position. Mine was to give effect to the work study outcomes. So you confirm, having said this, do you want to elaborate or expand before I ask you a few questions about this?
Yes, I confirm that this is my statement as read, and would want to elaborate by saying that I made it my duty after I got appointed that beyond interacting with individual police officers, especially the National Commissioner, as part of my orientation, and interacting with them as groups as they would organize, that I would go out of my way, understand some of the things from documents, from interacting with other people. And one of the people I met, of course, was former Minister Bheki during that time, who did an orientation, handed over a file to me, outlining things, some of them that were on course, others that I would need to deal with, including what the portfolio entailed in terms of various committees of cabinet and all of that. And of course, other people, as they would have wanted to meet me to advise here and there. It happened like that. And I must say I got a lot of support. And I thank all those people who interacted with me at that time, including in particular National Commissioner and his deputies. They were kind, they were open, they were interactive and cordial relations that they sought to develop and I sought to develop. But of course, I did become aware, as I say, of other things which wouldn't have been necessary to then say, let's discuss this and that. Just things that would have been happening in the department in that particular way. And of course, in this instance, later on, I familiarized myself with through meetings. So orientation became orientation, but at the same time, it became discussions. And in some cases, during those discussions, we took various decisions. So it was not always up to the end of the year, just a question of sitting and listening. We were very interactive together with the two deputy ministers, asking questions, but also opening up and leading discussions, but also in some cases, taking decisions when we felt we needed to test our ideas and what we had. And later on, I did become aware of this particular issue of units, of task teams, the difference between task team and the unit. And the names of such, and including the National Political Killings Task Team, and the history and background and all of those things. So we got to know those things up to end of the year in various things.
I think it would be expected of any new or a minister coming into a new portfolio, that's I suppose that's why you use the word orientation specifically. Or to orient means just to familiarize yourself. And you would rely on people telling you how things work before you get to grips with it, and you can start asking your own questions. So that would have been expected in the first period. But what I want to ask you to comment on is in that second sentence of paragraph 18, you use the word touched. You said some of these orientation briefings touched on matters relevant to the NPKTT. That seems to indicate that it was very superficial. There wasn't any sort of deep, meaningful discussions or consultations on this particular aspect that you mentioned. You just touched on it. It was just, it almost seems to indicate it was just on the surface. Your comment?
Not really. As it started, we were quite superficial, like what are the branches in the, or if I call that, or in terms of police, what are the divisions, for instance, what are the units, who had what, just superficial. But then we would have another round, much more intense. And then we started discussing separate things like support services alone. We started discussing crime intelligence alone, started discussing other matters alone, like Vispol and so on. So it went on and on as we moved on with the year up until this year. So we would have started in a superficial way, but as we went on with our work, we got to discuss things much more intense. And in this instance, we would go on to discuss, for instance, somewhere in November, the National Political Killing Stars team, like we would discuss other teams or other units much more than we had at the beginning, beyond just mention. That's why in those meetings we were then able to have opinions of our own as ministry to say, look, this is how we think or believe we should move forward with these particular teams, including the National Political Killing Stars team.
We're going to get to November 2024, and Honourable Chair and Honourable Members, also to link this to the evidence given by General Sabia, where he had mentioned that this had been discussed in November 2024. You will recall that he was challenged on that because it hadn't been mentioned previously, and that General Masemola, the National Commissioner, said that there was no discussions about the PKTT at all prior to the Minister's directive on the 31st. We had since inquired about this and asked for minutes of meetings. And I am going to refer the Minister in due course to bundle, no, not there, to Volume 4, which is Exhibit Bundle 4, and you'll see there was a meeting on the 1st of November, and it's at pages 163 to 177. But we'll deal with it in a bit more detail shortly. Is that's the meeting, Minister? Sorry, that you're referring to.
That's one of the meetings.
Yeah, there were 3 meetings in November. We asked for the minutes of those meetings. The only minutes which we actually received from the National Commissioner's Office were the minutes of the 1st of November.
Yes.
So I don't know whether you can access the minutes of these other meetings.
Not yet.
It would be helpful if you could.
Yes, not yet, but we know we held a meeting again on the 22nd.
Yeah.
Quite a larger meeting, and we had a discussion on this. I made statements in that meeting, which are in the minutes of the first. But I know I made statements also in the other meeting. The National Commissioner made statements in both meetings as well.
So just before we get there, before your appointment at the end of June of 2024, or shortly after, did you have any knowledge of the existence of the task team? When I talk about task team, I'm talking about the NPKTT. Yeah.
Well, I did in a way, in the sense that I would have served in cabinet from 2019, and there would be reports in cabinet with the relevant or from the relevant minister, and there would be other discussions, related discussions. But as minister, I'm above average about issues affecting government, because we do meet as cabinet from time to time, where you listen to other colleagues making reports or doing reports in various platforms inside and outside cabinet. So you get to be aware of what's happening in that department, even if it's not necessarily a department that you are heading. And in that way, I was in a way knowledgeable in that sense about the existence of some units, even though I couldn't name all of them at that time, as it were.
But you would have been aware of a political killings task team, in fact, when you were Premier.
Yes.
Or shortly afterwards, you gave evidence at the Morani Commission.
Yes, I was aware.
And one of the recommendations from that Commission of Inquiry was that such a team be established.
I was aware even before I became Premier in 2013 of what police were doing with violence and aspects of violence in the province of KwaZulu-Natal. I know, for instance, that there was a task team that was established in the province in 2014. I know there was another one that was established in 2016. And I know that there was then this one. By the time this one was appointed in 2018, I was at that time working at full-time at Lutula House, headquarters of the ANC, but I was aware that I was aware of those developments. That was before I got appointed as minister in 2019 in the first place.
Because the president made an announcement in the National Assembly, I think it was in May 2018, here in this National Assembly, that the situation warranted a special task team to investigate these political murders in the province of KwaZulu-Natal, and they must investigate and bring the perpetrators to justice. I don't know if you were present when when that announcement was made here in the National Assembly, or you became aware of it?
Well, I know that in 2019, the State of the Nation address, the President did make statements on the need for specialized units in subs to deal with what was happening at that time in the country, and that it was agreed that there would be those specialized task teams. Generally, and later I became aware that indeed relevant minister did start processes of responding to the calls that were made at that time. So I know that there was a particular study that was gone into in that year, 2019, to respond on the call that the President had made, that there is now a need to have specialized task teams, specialized units in subs to deal with various categories of crimes in the country in a much more coordinated, much more organized and resourced manner. And that study was indeed undertaken. But I know that when it was completed, already management of police, and I imagine with the minister leading, they were then entertaining ideas of saying, well, in 2018 we established another task team. We now have completed a study that seeks to rise above various task teams, which in their view were not necessarily impactful as they would have wanted them to be in terms of combating crime in the country. And they wanted to take the response of government as far as this is concerned to another level. Hence the study, hence then the decision to establish those specialized units in a coordinated way.
So were you aware that this interministerial committee had been appointed or established by the President to coordinate this effort of addressing the political killings in KwaZulu-Natal, that interministerial committee being the Minister of Police then at the time, who would have been Minister Pele, and the other ministers of intelligence, state security agency, defense, justice and constitutional development. Those in defense, they in that cluster. Were you aware of that, or did you become aware of that committee?
Yes, I became aware that there was an interministerial task team that was established as an intervention by the President in 2018, and he established that. What I then came to know later is that the intervention, the political intervention by the President, especially after one incident or at the time of one of the incidents in KZN, the President directed or commanded that there must be a mechanism to respond to the problem, and appointed interministerial task team or interministerial committee, who were tasked with that particular task of developing or establishing a mechanism to respond to the call at that time. And They then established a second tier, which was a steering committee, which I would imagine they established a third tier at an operational foundational level of people who would operate, and that was under a lieutenant general who was deputy national commissioner at that time. So the intervention that the president wanted to see and finally saw was a kind of a three-tier kind of intervention when it was completed and it started operating as it started, and then got to be known as the National Political Killings Task Team. So it referred to that kind of three-tier, each one clearly identified interministerial, and then the second tier being the steering, and then the operational one right on the ground of people who were operatives. So that was a complete mechanism that the president set up to deal with that incident of Mr. Makata, Mchunu, and other matters that got referred to them later, but it was in direct response to that particular incident, among others that had happened just before that one. And it was a concern to the president. That is what then happened, which would then be assessed or evaluated from time to time to look at impact and other aspects thereof.
Now, you mentioned that must one accept that you were briefed on this, on how the team was, or the unit, I think, would you prefer to call it a unit?
I prefer to.
Would you prefer to call the task team a unit?
No. I actually must express a worry that when Major General Van Rooyen was called, I think, to the Madlanga Commission, and she was asked a specific question: is there a difference between a unit and a team, task team? She, to the best of my collection, said there's no difference. I got very worried because throughout the orientation and so on, up to when I was given leave, there's always been a clear distinction between a task team and a unit. And as a practice in subs, the units become part of the organogram. And that includes that unit that was Katomena task team. I can't remember the exact term that they used, but that one was a unit, meaning it was part of the organogram. But this one, the political task team, has never been part of the organogram, including when we dealt with the organogram under my leadership after I got appointed, because under my leadership, what we did is we took the strategic plan and the annual plan, we started that, and we came together to say, what is the meaning of this in relation to this, the organizational structure, the current one of SAPS? And we reviewed that. We went to a thorough process of reviewing the organizational structure with a view to aligning it with the strategic plan of the department, following the imperatives of the 6th or 7th administration with its 3 priorities, with a thorough discussion.
When would that have been?
I may have the dates here when we had there would be various dates, but all I know is that in May this year, there's been a signing off of the new organogram that we started discussing last year. And it took months before we could complete it and make it ready to go to negotiations. But it has been signed off this year. And so that kind of process that we went to.
So can I just help us understand, Minister? So what appears on an organogram is the word unit. No words like task teams are on the organogram.
There isn't.
And if a unit is called a task team, then what is the status of this task team if it doesn't appear on the organogram? Is it an unofficial unit? Is it a rogue unit? How would you describe
a unit?
Yes.
Yes, a unit would be deliberately established as part of the organogram for a particular purpose. But it would be, as I have observed up to now, it would be on a sustainable basis. In other words, it would be envisaged as a long-term kind of an arrangement. Some of these units have been there for quite a long time, and that has been the practice. But at the same time, task teams have been established from time to time at various levels. I suppose that even at a district level, a district commissioner would observe a particular problem in their area of jurisdiction, and they would say, we need a particular task team to deal with that particular problem, and of 3 people or 4 people and so on, and they would be allocated some resources and they would deal with it. At provincial level, they would do the same, establish a task team for a particular purpose, with a specific time frame, specific allocation of resources, and it would be gone into. Once the mission has been accomplished, they would then withdraw members. Remember, when you establish a task team, you don't all of a sudden appoint people from outside. You pick up people from within that particular area as you choose, as they may be suitable in terms of their expertise for a particular purpose. And then you draft them in as part of that particular task team. And as soon as the mission has been accomplished, you then get them back so that they continue to play their role where they come from. You don't open up a gap on a permanent basis because it will cause confusion. Say, for instance, in a province, if you suddenly see the need to establish 8 task teams for a particular reason, it would mean that you would need to call a number of people from the and who you wouldn't be able to replace for the duration of that particular. So that's why it is always necessary that once you are done with the mission, you withdraw people. They don't ask you where to go. They go back to where they are ordinarily appointed. So that has been the practice, well established in SAPS.
So can we accept then, from what you're saying, that a task team won't appear on organizational structure or what is called an organogram because it is appointed to perform a specific task. And in this case, the president appointed this interministerial committee to establish a task team to deal with political killings, specifically in KZN.
And he made that task team be chaired by the Minister of Police, who would then perform administrative duties of the interministerial committee in terms of agendas for meetings, discussion, and all of those as Minister of Police. And everybody was aware that this is a task team. In fact, throughout government, in my experience, outlined before, once you mention task team in the country, two things jump up in your mind. One is that you are going to pool a number of people with skills that are relevant for what needs to be done. Like in a disaster, you put up a task team. You pull up people that are going to be relevant in dealing with that particular task that has been identified in a particular area for that particular time. But it is always an element of a time frame. You don't establish a task team on a permanent basis. If you do, it's rare. It would be peculiar, but ordinarily, a task team has a date of starting, date of ending, pool resources, you pull people back to where they belong. So this particular task team was established as such, as a task team. And this task would be evaluated from time to time and assessed whether it would still be needed as time went on, as it happened. Okay. That's the practice.
Yeah. So on what you are saying, Minister, so once this task, this job, same thing. You've got a job to do.
Yes.
You've got a job to do, and once your job is completed, thank you very much. The job is completed, and we don't need you anymore. So in this case, who would have determined or decided that the task has been performed and the team can now be disbanded?
Let me just make one example to respond to you. On the 2014 to 16 task team that was in KZN, it wasn't established by the president. It wasn't. It was internal to SAPS, and the minister would have started that one, possibly using his powers in terms of Section 207, 2, where his tasks are identified clearly. So he establishes that and picks up people from this and that unit, from that police station and so on. When it was time, when this one of 2018 got established, the way this one of 2014 to 16 was 2016 to 18, the way it was disestablished, when the discussions took off and matured of the National Political Task Team, people got informed that there is now a new direction and we're setting up a new one and so on. So there wouldn't have been a formal disbandment beyond telling people that we no longer have this one, we have this one. But as per whatever the minister would have directed, in this instance, the president intervened, and I call it political intervention, because before the president established the interministerial task team and directed them in a particular way, there was no such. And then the interministerial task team gets to discuss and put together ideas. What form is it going to take? What is it going to do? And so on. And they put in all the ideas as they did. Still, ministers. And the chair is a minister. And it goes on with the work. What happened in the new administration, the 7th administration, there's no interministerial task team in this regard. There isn't. Minister of Police can't establish an interministerial task team. It can only be the president and cabinet. So you land in that situation. Okay, you start working, you continue working. And then at a particular time, considering a number of factors, which I will go into if you give me time, then you take a particular decision.
So before we come to a particular decision or the decision that you took, the evidence is not dissimilar or different to what you are narrating, that there was a task team in KZN 2016, 2017, 2018, established in wake of Morani, but matters had worsened. The situation had been aggravated by more killings. That at a disturbing level, the president then said, "I'm going to appoint this interministerial committee to establish this task team, this political killings task team." So up until that point, there was a task team looking into political killings, but very much localized, made up of officers from KZN province. But it was then established that it wasn't that effective for various reasons. Officers from KZN, some would be bribed, some were corrupt, some are just scared because they come from the community. So it was established that this task team was ineffective, and then it was decided that they'll bring in officers from other parts of the country also to form this task team. I don't know if you're familiar with that as the narrative changes. So in 2018,
Yes.
the composition of this task team had now changed. You aware of that?
I'm quite aware of that because, as the name says or suggests, IMC, that is interministerial. They get brought together to work together and establish a mechanism in the way they did, as per their discussions. A mechanism, and it was two-tiered. They pull in other officials from relevant departments.
Yeah, so
in the steering committee, and then thereafter
the interministerial committee formed of different ministers would then provide expertise, resources from various departments to form a multidisciplinary team.
Yes.
And it would also involve the working with the NPA, so it was directed by a prosecutor.
Yes, and police from outside KZN.
And this formed part of a presentation that was done to the interministerial task team. Are you aware of that? And General Mchunu was instrumental in making such a presentation. I think at the time, General Satoli was the national commissioner.
Yes.
Are you aware of that?
Yes, he was. It was him at that time.
But are you aware of the presentation that was done? Were you aware of the role that General Mchunu played in the formation of this task team?
Yes, I'm aware. And I'm also aware of what other role players played, because it was not a one-man show. It was the interministerial task team giving a team of officials a task, which they came back to present to them. It was always a group of people.
In fact, if just for the record, Honourable Chair, honourable members, if I may refer you to bundle 3 of the exhibit bundle.
This one.
The exhibit bundle, yeah.
Yes.
You got it?
Yes.
Item 1.
Yes.
Item 1 of the exhibit bundle, EB1, pages 1 to 10.
So what page specifically?
And you'll see from page, you've got it, the Minister? Exhibit bundle 3.
That one. Yes.
Okay. You'll see at page 1, this is an information note. And the heading is Implementation Plan. Investigation of political related KwaZulu-Natal cases, KwaZulu-Natal from 1 July 2018 to 31 December 2018.
Yeah, I see that. That's page 2.
Okay. It is.
That's page 2 above.
And on page 10,
Okay.
you'll see at the bottom, it is dated 18 June 2018.
Yes, I see that.
And you'll see this plan was approved by then National Commissioner Sithole.
Yes, I see that.
And that looks like a signature or is a signature. And you'll see that this note was compiled by Brigadier Khumalo.
Yes, above.
That's right at the bottom. And it's verified by Lieutenant General N.S. Mchunu.
Yes, I see that.
So they played quite a prominent role in that, and the information note. When did you first have sight of this note? Or is this the first time that you have sight of this note? Or when we made it available to your lawyers, and it's also referenced in the. Sorry, maybe I should have just confirmed this with you also. We did make available to you and your lawyers the Mchunu statement with the annexures that was before Madlanga, and the Masemola statement and annexures.
Yeah.
So you would have seen that. So this note, when was the first time you saw this note?
To see this note?
Yeah, that I've just referred you to.
No, I've just seen it.
So you hadn't seen it before?
This very one?
Yeah,
No.
Yes, the one that I've just made reference to. The one that was approved by the National Commissioner on the 18th of June 2018.
Yes, I see it, and I've seen it before, not in this particular form, and not as a bundle, but just in parts of it, not strictly compiled like this. But I'm aware of the content of this. I've become aware of it before.
And
before I got this one.
Did you see it, or were you made aware of it as part of your orientation as the newly appointed minister?
Yes, as I indicated before, that as I familiarized myself or got to familiarize myself with issues, I came across many documents on various aspects of subs, either distributed or I got them elsewhere, or brought to my attention elsewhere. So I've been aware of this, but not as compiled the way it is compiled, so, but different aspects thereof.
So this information note is very helpful in terms of giving us background why this team was established. You'll see that on page 1.
Yes.
And you'll see in the first paragraph under background that it was established by the President in May 2018. The Interministerial Committee consisting of Ministries of State Security, Justice and Correctional Services and Police. The committee is chaired by the Minister of Police and is tasked with ensuring that the perpetrators of these crimes are brought to book. The IMC met with the task team investigating these cases on 21 May 2018, and one of the preliminary observations was that this multidisciplinary task team was working in silos, and it does not have an investigation and prosecutorial plan or strategy that is aligned to overall government priorities contained in the National Development Plan of 2030, the Medium-Term Strategic Framework, the MTSF, and other key policy prescripts, i.e. creating safe and secure environment. Then the then acting provincial commissioner led the process of developing the strategy, which was tabled, and at the meeting of the IMC, the strategy and its implementation plan were provisionally approved by the National Commission. Then they deal with the current situation on page 2, on page 3, the operational approach and concepts. And then in paragraph 4, on page 4, composition of the operational teams. You'll see there it's quite senior, brigadiers and colonels. They're all senior positions, Minister. The cost at paragraph 5. So this plan is it will commence on the 1st of July 2018 to the 31st of December 2018. So that certainly appears to accord with your understanding. If this is a task team that's appointed for a limited period, and this was in terms of this particular plan, and the cost of deployment of 139 personnel over 6 months is estimated at just under 50 million rand. And the breakdown is provided for on page 5. Then under monitoring and evaluation on page 7, this is spelling out how they will work. And then at the bottom, or towards the bottom of page 7, you see that, Minister?
Yes.
Under recommendations, the implementation plans, plan for the strategy to investigate and prosecute perpetrators of political related cases to be approved, the project to be approved and funded from the national budget on the estimated total amount of 49,138,808 rand to be managed at Provincial Office KwaZulu-Natal. And it's signed off by Lieutenant General Acting Provincial Commissioner KwaZulu-Natal N.S. Mchunu. You see that on the 18th of June. And it is On the following page, you'll also see that it's signed off also by then Deputy National Commissioner of Policing at the time, SF Masemola, who's the current National Commissioner, on the 18th of June. And he makes the following comment: cost center, costing different to other national ops, understood that the provincial ops vehicle budget, something. But anyway, he doesn't disapprove. He supports the recommendation. It's also supported by one of the other deputy national commissioners of crime detection at the time. That's Lieutenant General Shumane, Tsumane. It is also approved by the then national head of the Hawks, Directorate for Priority Crime Investigation, Lieutenant General Labia, on the 18th of June, and also by one of the other deputy national commissioners, Asset and Legal Management, FN Vuma, Lieutenant General, on the 18th of June, and then finally signed off on the 18th of June by the then National Commissioner, General Sitoli. So my first question was, when did you first see this note? And I think your answer was, you must correct me if I'm wrong, was now when I've read it to you. But you somehow heard it in different forms or formats during this time when you were oriented as minister.
Yes, I'm saying I did come across this information before.
But you didn't see it in this particular format. This note that you've seen in front of you now.
Yeah, I'm saying I have come across this information before, but not necessarily compiled like this, but I've come across this particular note before.
So now from this note, and this is for your comment, it appears to be a case that this was a political initiative made by the president. In his capacity as the president of the country, is addressing or trying to address an issue of grave concern to him and to all of us, that these political killings in KZN is unacceptable, is out of control, and needs to be addressed. And he forms this interministerial task team. But now this political initiative has to be implemented. So
yes.
Given some meat. And what happens is that there's a presentation by Lieutenant General Mchunu, and it's spearheaded. The project leader is Khumalo, and they make a presentation which is approved, and it must now be implemented and it must be operationalized, if you don't mind that language. And it's budgeted for from the national budget. And it's approved by the head of legal and asset at the, so the task team is put into full operation. Now, who has the control and management of the task team? Is it the interministerial committee or is it the national commissioner? Because this task team is now going to report to Mchunu and Khumalo and ultimately the national commissioner. What is your understanding?
Now, the first understanding that I've had or developed throughout as I familiarized myself with this is that this is what the president envisaged when he made the decision to intervene in the situation in KZN, establish a mechanism, but he himself establishes an interministerial task team. Go and work, go and do, but this is what I want to see, so that we combat the problem. Then they go and have a discussion, and they give themselves tasks. And the key things is to establish structures. They establish a structure, two structures below them, managerial, the other one much more operational on the ground, and they do that. So it is multi-tier as it happened. So when you ask me what who composed, it's all the people that were seen to be relevant, starting with ministers, relevant ministers, and then the next tier, relevant people and departments, and the province. Hence, you see General Mchunu signing all of that, because it's in KwaZulu-Natal. He's provincial commissioner. He lays the platform. He avails the platform where this mechanism will operate, and he needs to support, he needs to be active. And you would see that when you run the other units on illegal mining, for instance, when it happens in Northwest, you go there, the central person there would be the provincial commissioner, even though there are people above him, as is happening, because it's under this Paul and so on. So you go there, all of you, but the person who provide the platforms, the provincial commissioner, and is involved. And so even though it's not a provincial kind of an instrument or structure, but because it is in that province, he gets recognized, he gets encouraged to play a role, a conducive role, an enabling role, so that all other players are able to move. And when they move out, they are able to say, we leave a person who's providing a platform actively, and in this instance, it's General Mchunu, and it works like that. And they therefore established it like this.
But Minister, didn't it work like this according to this plan? There was the initiative from the president, the formation of the establishment of the interministerial committee. Importantly, because you don't want to operate in silos anymore. You want to have a coordinated approach. So justice is involved, and the NPA is made available to assist, appoint a prosecutor dedicated to this task. So all of them are dedicated from various, whether it's from the State Security Agency to provide intelligence, defense to provide some or other assistance. All of them are there. That's why they form this team. But the team that now is established by Mchunu, led by Khumalo, they must now begin to operate. Surely they operate in accordance with the instructions of either Mchunu, Khumalo, or the National Commissioner, who at the time was Sithole. They don't operate according to the instructions of the Interministerial Committee. Well, how do you understand it? Because this is signed off, it's approved, the funding is approved. Or let me start with this question or proposition, that do you accept that this task team that was established certainly for this period from 1 July 2018 to 31 December 2018 conforms to the law? It's a lawfully established task team.
Yes.
in fact, approved by the Interministerial Committee,
Yes.
of which the Minister of Police is
And functioning under their direction.
yeah. Let us understand that, because that seems to be your case, isn't it? We're going to get there when we debate the directive. Here we have a plan that's been set out, how it's going to be monitored and evaluated and implemented. But on the ground and how they operate, those instructions are given, as I mentioned, according to this plan, by Mchunu or Khumalo or by the National Commissioner, surely not by any of the ministers. Do you accept that?
No, look, when the president intervenes, as he did at that time, he thereafter, once he had directed, as part of his directive, the group of ministers to develop a mechanism, there's no way you can divorce him and say he can now go to London and have a holiday. That was not the case. He had expectations that things would roll out the way he had envisaged. So he becomes and stays part of it, but not operational. But that is his intervention. Then he leaves the interministerial task team. Then they work. Now he's not part of them. He's not minister. He's not with them. He's sitting in his office doing other things. They come and bring reports, but they are working there. Now, you're not going to say they are separate from his command to a point where he has nothing to do with that. Now, what do the interministerial do? They discuss, how do we roll out the mechanism as instructed by the president? They then say the best way of doing this, get prosecution, get skills in terms of detectives, get people from outside. They discuss actively. Once they agree.
In fact, Minister, just to interpose, and in fairness to you, the presentation that was initially made by the then acting provincial commissioner of KZN, that did have the effect of persuading the interministerial committee that approach at the time was not the right approach, and it wasn't producing the desired results. So they were instrumental in saying no, and this new multidisciplinary approach should. That's fair comment, I think.
Yes. So once the interministerial committee have conceptualized this thing, of course, discussing with everybody at officials level, in other words, officers, they then leave. They say, you do as discussed, this is the resolution and so on. And they start implementing. The people who implement are not necessarily the politicians, but they establish, they direct, they give directives to say, this is how it should happen. And these ones operationalize it, and they become, they bring it into this, they manage it. In other words, it becomes managerial when it gets to implementation, but you can't divorce. As I spoke about 3 tiers, and maybe even 4 tiers if you count the president. And so managerially, they then implement as you see them. So this is at management level. Even them, General Khumalo, General Mchunu, would leave certain people, either groups of them coordinated at a particular level. They wouldn't run around with every task of the task team. They wouldn't, for instance, be involved personally on all the investigations, on all the collective collection, on the arrests and so on. They are managing, but there are those who run the actual errands. That is another tier of people. So that's my understanding.
Now, what did happen, and this is the uncontested evidence that thus far, is that this task team, its life was extended, because the one that I read to you, this terminated on the 31st of December 2018. But we know it continued to operate. We know that from former Minister Cele, who's coming to testify here. We know that from the National Commissioner, Masimola, who at the time was the Deputy National Commissioner. We know that from Lieutenant General Mchunu. So it was extended from time to time. And in that period from 2018 up until now, up until November, December 2023, the task team reported to the Interministerial Committee. I think it was twice a year. They had briefings, and then the Minister of Police, who's the sort of chairperson of this Interministerial Committee, would have media briefings to say, this is what the task team is doing. These are so many cases that have been resolved, and so on. And an example of this you'll find. It's also in bundle 3. What pages are they? 20. It's EB3. EB3, starting at page 15, and you'll see, for example, at 18, there's a media briefing, 21 May 2018, 3 August 2018. You see it there, Minister? 3 August 2018, there's a media briefing, hashtag police ministry, hashtag media alert, police minister, hashtag Becky Kelly, to give an update on progress thus far on political killings in the province of KZN, 3 August at 11:30. Then there's another one on the 13th of September 2018, again, where former Minister Cele featuring prominently, March 2018, on page 23. That's 2019, 28 March 2019, then June 2021, and this appears to be the last one, 6 September 23. And certainly the last time that Minister Cele was Minister of Police. And you'll read from, if you're there, Minister, 6 September 2023, media advisory issued by the Police Ministry. The Interministerial Committee looking into political killings in KwaZulu-Natal will on Wednesday, 6 September 2023, update the media on the latest successes of the team tasked with investigating politically related violence in the province. This briefing follows a meeting of the Interministerial Committee consisting of Ministers of State Security, Defence, Justice and Correctional Services, and is chaired by the Minister of Police, General Bheki Cele. Members invited to attend. That apparently was the last, and apparently that was the last briefing, and the President was also in attendance at that media briefing. It was apparently at the airport. So that's how it worked. This team was established and it was extended from time to time, from 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, until 2023, and more recently, it's attached to your statement that it's SM31 at volume 1. SM31 at page 235. This is an information note. It's a request for financial authority for 2024-2025 National Task Team investigating politically related cases in KwaZulu-Natal, and it and on page 238 you'll see it's approved. Request for financial authority is approved for 20 million rand, and there's a note by the National Commissioner, provisional whilst the finalization of allocation for, what is that word? For is processed. Task team, something beyond elections, so long as there is work to be done, cannot be localized. Anyway, so it is an approval. We know until I think 26 March or 31 March 2025. Sorry. Yeah. So that request was approved by the National Commissioner, and you'll see there's comments at page 237 by the Lieutenant General, Divisional Commissioner of Financial Management and Administration, Lieutenant General Dempani, on the 12th of April 24. So yes, you'll see on page 237 at the top that it's recommended by the project manager, Lieutenant General Kumalo. He says that the estimated budget is for 94 million. Somewhat be approved and funded. Alternatively, he says, whilst the final budget allocation is being considered for 2024-25, a 2 months portion, 15,810,000, be approved. And it is supported by Lieutenant General, Deputy National Commissioner Crime Detection, Sabia, on the 26th of March. And there's some comments also by Lieutenant General Dempani, and then eventually the National Commissioner approves it on the 16th of April for 20 million rand. So up until as we speak, the approvals had been given for this task team to stay in operation until next year. Approvals are given in the same way it has been since 2018, 2019. So do you accept the lawfulness of the establishment of this task team?
Yes, the lawful establishment, yes, I accept. But I need to explain one thing. What you've just referred to.
I know, to be fair, I know you're not a lawyer, and these things may be open to interpretation. So just be careful when you agree with me, or I don't want to put words in your mouth. But this team was established and maintained above board from 2018 through now to maybe the next cycle, next year, March 26, and we'll see whether its life is further extended. But the monies were approved, presumably in terms of the PFMA, everything seems to be above board.
Firstly, you would see in the note that you've just presented as part of the process, that there was a note that say that the needs after the allocation that was processed of 20 million, there needs to be a work study. I'm sure you see that from the CFO. But there's a difference between an approval for funding and an approval for extension, in terms of because if you start right from July, it's clear that it was for 6 months. The task team was established for 6 months, after which there was a review or an evaluation to say, this is how we've performed in the last 6 months. And there is a need then to extend, which would be approved by National Commissioner and the Minister. And these extensions were done up to 2022. That is the second part, the second aspect. So the approvals for funding are one thing. The approval for the extension and further existence is a different matter. That is my determination, or that's what I've come to understand.
Sorry, Minister, I'm just being...
That's why Senior Council, you'd see in 2019.
No, I'm just looking at because I couldn't make out the handwritten note from Lieutenant General Dampani, the CFO, isn't it? The CFO. At page 67, also to volume 1, there where this note also appears.
Yes.
Lieutenant General, Divisional Commissioner of Financial Management Administration, Dapani, approved a significantly reduced budget compared to that initially requested for the financial year, and in so doing stated the following: considering the 11% reduction on the operational budget of the organization, the following are recommended: an amount of 20 million to be approved for the 2024-25 financial year. Post-elections, the task team be deactivated as it has been in existence for the last 5 years. Component which component to be tasked to urgently conduct work-study investigation for the establishment of a permanent structure in KZN. But it appears that that recommendation by Lieutenant General Dimpani was never accepted by the National Commissioner. Because the National Commissioner, as you see from page 238, then approves funding for 20 million.
That is one matter. But I am arguing before the ad hoc committee that there was an extension. There were extensions 6 months after the establishment, 12 months after the establishment, and it continued up to 2022, with the National Commissioner approving, with the Minister approving up to 2022, signing and getting presentations in terms of assessing the further need for the task team. When you see the CFO saying, I will not approve 94 million, there's a problem, and then recommends this establishment and a work study. That is what would have met the prescripts of the PFMA. That you go for a work study beyond a particular period. You go for a work study. You produce results. You make a presentation, and then so that you approve the budget. It's not budget for approval without a proper assessment of the need presented, among others, to the minister, so that you continue in the form that it had been intended to. But I know what happened, how the gap got brought in. When General Stoller left in 2022, which was the last time that the approval of 2022, or the approval that I'm talking about, came, which had been the practice before, there was no proper handover between the then National Commissioner and the new National Commissioner, which is General Masimolo. There was a gap. I know that the gap was caused by the fact that when General Stoller left, he was then required to hand over to the minister because the general was not there, had not been appointed. And General Stoller had an objection saying that he has to hand over to another national commissioner, can't hand over to the minister. And then there was a break, there was a gap. After that, what has been happening is the approval of finances, not, in other words, approval for funding, which is different from further approval for the existence of the political killings task team as per its objective, where you sit and assess the need as per the original objective. But the second point is that as early as 2019, the specialized units had been established. And the reason why there was an extended need for the existence of the task team beyond 2019, it was because the task teams, the specialized units, that had been envisaged to replace the task team were still in formation. In other words, they were still being established. Now, the view or the vision was that once we will have all these specialized task teams fully functional, you would then cease to have the political killings task team, which itself was a kind of a silo, because it pulled different people from elsewhere, put them together elsewhere, and they were dealing with one province in isolation of other provinces where otherwise matters were taking place. Now, you then needed to approve every year so that you justify the existence of the political task team, which would then form the basis of your approval for funding. That's where my argument is. I differentiate between the approval for funding and an approval for the further existence of the political task team. So what we are talking about was the approval for funding without a necessary assessment for further existence, in line with the original objectives of the task team. And I'm adding another one. I'm adding that you now had a different scenario where you had units, specialized units, but which were still in formation. Now, by the time General Masimula approves, as he has done this year, he is doing that over and above the study that got approved in 2019, which has the political killings task team already as a subunit and other specialized task team, including taxi violence and so on. And this is a structure that we approved in November last year, because we looked at that work study of 2019, which had been approved and signed off. And we say here, you have what is ideal. Now, remember, by the time we approve the structure, we have the imperatives of the 7th administration, which, among others, say you need to make people of South Africa, all of them, feel safe, not some people somewhere, not a certain grouping of people called public representatives or councillors or those who are political. You now have a new direction, a new political imperative that say protect all the people of South Africa, make them feel safe. And in fact, it is in line with the Constitution of the Republic. The Constitution of the Republic doesn't allow you to protect some and not others. It doesn't. So when we looked at that, that is when I wrote the directive. I took into consideration, I'm still going to go to the reasons, but I'm just picking up that you had to, you can't freeze people. You now have a new structure that caters for the needs, for the need of the, or further need of the political killings task team. You are establishing those specialized units, and you have actually gone to establish others, and that you are on your way going forward. But then you still approve the existence. Now, what are you finding? We are going to find that those people who are in the murder and robbery unit that was approved in 2019, approved again when we did the structure in 2024, they are going to sit and not do their work, because the political killings task team is there, and it's them who are not going to do work. That's what you're finding in Gauteng, for instance. They have these units in terms of the new structure. serious and violent crimes, and you have organized crime. And if you establish a political killing task team in Gauteng, it means you are putting them over and above organized crime units, over and above organized crime, serious and violent crimes units. There are 2 units that are now existing. Then you put, so what you are going to do with your fund, you are going to pull people into the political killings task team, and those who remain in these 2 units, they are not going to do anything. But you are going to be piling people with an undefined kind of situation, and you're not going to be effective on the ground. There's just no way you are going to be effective on the ground, because you are piling people for the same task. Now, I'm then explaining 2 processes that are separate. You create the political killings task team for a particular objective. You assess it in 6 months. You then sign to extend it up to 2022. And you don't do it after 2022. But all you do, you approve funding for that. And from where I sit, you don't meet the prescripts of the PFMA. And therefore, if you're called by SCOP, if I'm called by SCOP to say, how do you justify what you were funding beyond 2022? We will not have an answer. Because what the motivations that you were getting, they were motivations for money. They were not motivations based on proper assessment for the need to, because if you did the need for further existence, you would have found that the structure has since been reviewed in the form of specialized units, which was not there when the task team was established in 2018. That's my argument.
Okay. Thank you, Minister. Honorable Chair, shall we take the lunch adjournment at this point? And we can debate this issue further.
Thank you so much. Honorable members, and thank you, Minister. Honorable members, I'm giving you a break of 1 hour. We will return at 14 hours.